So for those of you that have been wondering how we live when we're not on trail, here you go. We are at a park in Orange County, one of a couple that we move around to because there are no long-term stay campgrounds out here. Well, there's one, and it costs $1,700 a month during the cheap time of year and $2,300 during the expensive time of year, and that was a few years ago, and the price goes up. So we basically bounce around from campground to campground. We live in this van. This van is a 2005 Ford E350 Econoline that is converted. The thing everybody asked is, did we do it? And you see all this woodwork? I don't have the skills, I don't have the time, I don't have the place to work. We bought this already converted. The wood was what sold us on it. We found somebody on Craigslist who sold it to us. And yes, it looks really, really cool. The pop top is nice because I can stand up inside. And it looks like it has a lot of features. There actually used to be a wall right here that had a TV and another cabinet. It's a little less functional than you'd think, though. That refrigerator is actually powered by the old solar system, and we had to rip that out because it was a fire danger. So as of right now, that Bullbat power station is actually how we are powering the lights and anything else in here. So it has a queen-size bed in the back. It has a sink that can run off of a 5-gallon water tank. However, that requires power, so that is not working. It has a refrigerator. However, that requires power, so that's not working. It had a microwave. We removed it because required power, etc., and we don't use it. There is a propane stove inside that we use to cook on sometimes. We also have a camp stove, so we often cook outside. There are LED lights on the interior that really light up, and that's what's running off the power station right now. So the other thing that we just really loved about this van is we started joking about how it was the cantina van, because these tiles made us think of a Mexican restaurant. And it has a queen-size bed. It's just enough for me to sleep on. My feet dangle over the edge just a bit, so I tend to sleep diagonal. Tater's is, of course, a little bit on the shorter side. We looked at a couple of different options, and let me tell you, the fact that I can stand up in here was a huge selling point. This is actually a pop top, meaning we can deploy it when we stop, which is a pain when we pack things up, but again, it's well worth having the living space. These window covers I just made out of some material, some insulated material I got at Home Depot. They're not done super well, but that's a whole thing. It is nice having these zip windows so we can get some ventilation in here. We removed the wall that used to be right here. You can see the gap on the floor. The guy that built it had the wall and had a TV mounted on there. The problem was it made it really hard to get in and out of the door. And we don't need a TV. You watch everything on an iPad, a phone, a computer. So we kept it for, the 2 years we've had this, but then decided, you know what, we really want the additional space. So we have a swivel seat coming, and that seat is actually going to turn around and lock in place, and so we'll be able to use that as a recliner when we're here. As I said, this is kind of the latest enhancement. This is a Bullbat power station. They're a competitor of like the Goal Zero or the Jackery. I got this as a gear test, and it's actually working out really, really well for us. We wired the lights into a cigarette lighter, and so we can just power it off this, and the advantage is we can charge this off a wall. It'll run for about a week at a time with our light usage, and then Jen just takes it to school, we can recharge it, and we're good to go. The van did actually have solar when we bought it. That thing has a solar panel. The problem was, other than the wiring inside was a bit of a fire hazard, and we ended up having to take it apart because of that. You see those arms or those rails on the side of the panel? That partially shades the solar panel, which lowers the efficiency massively. Also, the solar panel up there is a really cheap, low wattage one, so we're currently debating. The phase 2, when we have the money for it, is to get a solar panel that will charge the power station. We're not going to go back to the thing with car or marine batteries. We had those, they were too big. This van isn't set up, and we're not going to spend several $1,000s. So I can either get a foldable panel that hooks into the Bullbat and then comes out here, and I set it up whenever we have time to charge. That requires me to be here more often than I am, though, during the day, which we aren't. Or we get another panel and install it up there. We're going to have to find somebody to help us. And then we could kind of trickle charge the battery throughout the day. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards at the moment. But I got to get somebody to help me, because even removing that existing solar panel is going to be a whole thing. This thing was put together kind of oddly. Everybody does get all excited when they hear that I have a van. They're like, oh, dude, van life. And I try and explain it's more kind of like urban car living at this point. We try and minimize the amount of driving we do in this van. The reason is the more miles you put on it, the more mechanical issues you're going to have. It is a big vehicle. It is a full-size Econoline van. It's not easy to park or anything else. And gas, just keeping costs down. So we basically use it as kind of our base station and move it wherever we're going. Now, unfortunately, you'll notice I have the Jeep and Jen has a car. That makes 2 people and 3 vehicles. So this gets really complicated. Anytime we have to move the vehicles, it actually takes 2 trips and we end up doing a lot of backtracking. But unfortunately, it's the price of doing business. We need to stay in this area. This is the affordable option, and neither of us can do without a car due to working circumstances and diving and stuff like that. I was just talking to a friend the other night, and they were saying that 2-bedroom apartments in Southern California are now going for $3,000 a month. It was $2,000 when I got rid of mine, which is just crazy. And you know, when I was working IT, I could afford it, but that's not how I want to spend my money. It cost me $2,000 a month to be on the trail for lodging, food, gear, stuff like that, and I was way happier out on the trail. So as you can see, the bed is actually on top of a storage space. Storage is kind of at a premium on here. We can't have a lot of things. We also have a storage locker in town, but we basically just keep a minimal amount of stuff in here, and mostly Jen and I live out of our cars. So at any given point, I have dive gear in the car, I've got my laptop, I've got my workout stuff, my shower stuff, because one of the things we found out when we got back here is the well at this particular campground ran dry. No potable water, no showers, and I had literally nowhere to shower. I had to get a gym membership just so I would have a place to shower while I'm out here. And of course, other than the fact you need to shower and clean up after you're diving in the nasty salt water, you have to clean the gear pretty much every single time. I don't always if I'm going to be going the next morning, but even then you want to wash off the sand, because we're beach diving, you get really sandy coming out. So what I do is I have that bin. I take that bin. If I'm in a campground with water, I can fill that and swish it around and then leave things out to dry. Otherwise, I have to find like a beach shower, or today I was diving with Andy and he let me clean at his place. But you know, you don't want to do that to somebody long term. Then it takes a while for it to drip dry. These wetsuits take like 2 days. This is a 7mm bare wetsuit. And you're not supposed to dry them in the sun, so I have to leave them out drip dry. Sometimes we're not back till after dark, so I have to put them out for a while, and then you don't want to leave them out because the stuff is expensive, so it's less than ideal. I need to get some sort of like a pop-up tent where I can hang them outside, but you know, we don't have that. We have limited amount of money to spend on our living situation here because everything's geared towards the next adventure. We're going to Utah in about a week. In June, it'll be the next big through hike, and there may be another like moderate size one in March, April timeframe. You know, we'll see. So yeah, we basically manage this by moving around. We're rarely in one spot for longer than 4 or 5 days. Generally on weekends, the campgrounds fill up, and so we have to move. Right now, this is a Friday. Normally we would be leaving town, but this is a weird weekend, so we're actually staying. So we have to move on a Saturday, but that's why there's so many people around here. And I also can't record all the time here because I don't want to bother all the people like playing around with their kids. So I'm talking about digging a cat hole in Alabama while like rednecks look at me. See, this is an example of, oh, that's a cute little cabinet. Everybody thinks they look so good. And then you open them and these are not very deep at all. They're almost useless. And this one flies open, which is why I have it bungeed closed. Fancy, huh? So this is actually the majority of our easily accessible space, and as you can see, it's camping dishes. One of these boxes is just for coffee, so I can have my grinder and everything else. And then there's a 5-gallon propane tank under there, which powers that. And to answer the burning question on everybody's mind of how we make coffee, hand burr grinder, AeroPress. AeroPresses are awesome, and boiling water on the stove. Or if I'm lazy, I use the remaining via that I have left over from the Eastern Continental Trail. This refrigerator is unpowered food storage, and like I said, the moment I can find somebody to build me shelves with a face, we are getting rid of this refrigerator and having more storage space. So this bench, it has seat belts. The guy thought that was where the one that originally made it, thought that passengers could ride there. We mostly use it as a seat, and then clothing storage is here. So I did want to move into the van. I had an apartment, we could afford the apartment, all of that. I just didn't like having all the stuff and sitting still. The big thing the van gave us, other than we're out in campgrounds, and I tend to like that, do better mentally, happier being outside, especially on weekdays when it's not busy. The other thing is it gave us the ability to kind of shut things down when we were out of town. The first summer after I quit my job, we were just going to take the summer off, go do some things, and then I was going to go back to work in October. That was the original plan. Somewhere Taters is laughing to herself. We kept the apartment. We still had a 200-gallon reef tank. We loved that thing. We loved our fish, but while we were away for a couple of weeks in Bali diving, we had to talk with Jen's parents constantly and have them like keep up with it. And it just adds a big hassle and cost. And then we were looking at doing the PCT, and it's like, we're out for 6 months. That's a lot of rent. You know, that's $12,000 just covering the rent, never mind all the utilities and things like that. So that's why we made the hard choice to get this. And then we actually pay a vehicle storage company. So we have a place where we can drop the van off whenever we go out of town. It's safe, it's watched, not washed, indoor or outdoor storage, and we don't have to worry about it. And that's where it was for the 10 months I was on the trail. Everybody always wants to know, does Jen live in the van when I'm not around? No, she does not. There are two reasons. One is she has a little car and her driving not so good sometimes. This is a very big vehicle. Her backing this up would be absolutely terrifying. She doesn't want to drive it anyway. And the other thing is driving this around like to and from school, massive amount of gas, that wouldn't work. So she needs her car and can't move it. If we had a long-term place where we could park it, yes, she would live in it. But since it has to move, doesn't work. So this goes into storage, and she just lives in her vehicle. I mean, both of us have vehicles. I can sleep in the back of that. We keep enough stuff to kind of survive with it. This is kind of a luxury in a lot of ways. When we were first looking at doing this, we did think about just living out of the campground and setting up a tent. I didn't want to do that because of wear and tear on tents. It's one thing if you're camping for like a week or two, but long term you just destroy them. Wind gets bad out here sometimes. I wanted to have something where we were covered, and I wanted to have something with power, so we got this. Jen, especially when it's just her, she tends to work long hours at her teacher job. So she would rather just work her hours and then be able to sleep in her car on the side of the road, or just go to a campground and have less of a hassle. So yeah, this has been in storage more than we've been living in it for about the 2 years that we've had it. We moved into our van in, I think, January, February of 2020. We had accounted for everything except for worldwide pandemic shutting everything down. And so things got really crazy really quick, because when California went into lockdown, when things got so bad in March, April, they shut down all the campgrounds. So all of a sudden we had to move. We can't just park this anywhere. There's no shower, there's no bathroom. So we had to throw it into storage and find Airbnbs to stay at, which was hard because things were shutting down by county. So we had to go out to like Vegas, Lake Havasu to find a place to stay. So, okay, then I go do the PCT, fair enough, come back, get the van, come back to the campground. What happens first? Evac due to fire, because there was a massive fire in Orange County, messed everything up. And then in just the 3 months I was back, the second lockdown happened, so we had to do it all over again. This time, hopefully no lockdown. Hopefully we're going to be in this van until June when I leave again. So we love our van. The lifestyle is a challenge sometimes, and you just have to be willing to live with that. One of the things people don't often realize is, yes, it's simple having a small space, but it's also a very small space. It's one thing if it's just me in here. When it's Jen and I, you can start to get on each other's nerves if you're in here for long. We're generally outside people. We're generally active, so it works. Also, we're not usually here for an entire day with both of us. Either I'm here during the day and she's working, or we're just here together in the evening. Without that, this would be a real struggle. And there is a real lack of privacy. I mean, there are people in campsites around listening to me narrate this video right now. So whatever you're doing, whatever you're talking about, I mean, this is just mesh. Technically, we could drop the pop top, and that might keep it a little quieter, but you've got to ventilate in here. So you just kind of have to get used to living publicly. And again, if we could go out to a BLM area, that would be one thing. That would be great. The nearest BLM land where we could go park for a weekend is, 2.5 hours away. So that's not really an option. And Orange County is crazy. We could buy a piece of land for $80,000 in certain places. You can't put a trailer on it. You cannot live, you cannot have an RV. They restrict all of that. You can, if you buy land and you are building a house, which is going to cost you $500,000 out here, you can put a trailer on the property for 6 months while it's being built, and that is it. Have I mentioned they are crazy out here and I should not be living in Orange County? Freaking wilderness class. And Jen's really, really good school situation. She loves her school and does not want to leave her school, and I don't want her to leave her school. So yeah, that's kind of our existence here. This van does not go further than just around Orange County, and there's basically 3 spots that it rotates between, unless we're going to do laundry or something like that. This does not work for carrying my dive gear and other things. It's just too hard to move around in a confined area, and keeping salt water in here would really mess stuff up. So I like to say we don't do the van life thing. We just do the urban car living thing, urban vehicle living. Because yeah, we're not pretty enough to be like van life people. Back that up to the beach, open it up, take our Instagram shots, and then go, put it back in the driveway and go back to our home. Yeah. As of right now, our plan is to do this for at least a couple of more years. The van's not paid off. It's a whole thing how you have to pay for a conversion van, by the way, because it's not a normal vehicle and insurance and all that. It's the whole thing. So yeah, we're going to do this for at least a couple more years and then see. The goal is this lets us be away for long periods of time, like 10 months doing the ECT. And we're thinking of doing like seasonal dive work out of the country is one of the things we're hoping to do. So this would stay here in storage. We can come and go as we need, and we have a home-ish.